If you're still not convinced that Nick from Reventure Consulting should not be giving you real estate investing advice or home purchasing advice, then I want you to stick around to continue to hear a little bit more of his expert analysis be absolutely destroyed. In this video, he's going to talk about the wave of coming foreclosures and how bad loans that are still prevalent nowadays are going to be the cause. Yes, that's right. According to him, we're going to see a return to the damage and destruction that was caused because of bad loans and a wave of foreclosures destroying housing prices. Let's go ahead and see if he has anything legitimate to show with his stats on this, or if once again he's only painting half of the picture and cherry picking the stats to drive fear so that, as I mentioned last time, he can continue to sell you security. Let's jump in.
All right, well, let's actually look at the data. Let's actually compare what he's saying to what's really occurring out there. Why don't we listen to him first?
Banks are preparing to unleash a devastating wave of foreclosures that's going to make the 2022 housing crash even worse. And in particular, folks, you got to understand, these foreclosures...
2022 housing crash? What housing crash? There's been no crash. A crash is a 20% decline in prices over a 12-month period. That's the typical definition of a crash in the stock market or housing prices. There's been no crash. We're just now starting to see some prices come down a small amount. 2022 housing crash? Didn't happen, buddy.
Been building up over the last 2 years during the pandemic. There was a foreclosure moratorium. There was an eviction moratorium.
True.
We had millions of defaults where banks were not allowed to foreclose. Well,
True.
Now they are allowed to foreclose and cause home prices to crash in certain cities and certain neighborhoods that are most exposed. And one thing that has me convinced that this foreclosure wave is going to be way worse than people expect is because there's so many bad loans out there on the US housing market right now. Like if we look over the last 70 years at the average down payment that a home buyer puts down, we can see it's been in consistent decline. In the 50s, they were putting over 35% down. In the 70s, they were putting over 25% down. Well, today, they're only putting about 17% down according to Fannie Mae. And as we all know, the less money that a borrower puts down to buy the house, the more likely they are to default. And I think some of this data might be a little shocking to you all because we're sold a narrative by the mainstream financial media, by people in real estate, that all of the loans in the housing market are good loans. Like I see so many people say that today. They say, oh, it was just the mid-2000s subprime bubble where we had bad loans. We fixed all that. We have good loans today. And folks, that is not true at all.
Okay. Now it's time for us to jump in and dissect this. So, never have I heard somebody suggest that what constitutes a bad loan is because you put less money down. When I think of bad loans, I think of what he had talked about in the 2006, the run-up to the 2007-2008 recession. Subprime mortgages were bad, considered bad, because of liar loans. People were lying about the income they had. They were lying on their documents. They had no income. They had no business having any loan of any type. Or they had adjustable rate mortgages, or they had both. They had a liar loan into an adjustable rate mortgage. Why is an adjustable rate mortgage bad? Well, with today's more common mortgages, 30-year fixed rate debt, your interest rate stays the same for all 30 years. Your payment does not change, at least the principal and interest portion doesn't. Of course, taxes and insurance change wherever you are in the country, and taxes go up over time. But the principal and interest, the majority of your mortgage payment is principal and interest, that stays the same. It's fixed for the entire life of the loan. But with adjustable rate mortgages, that wasn't the case. What was happening back then is people would get a teaser rate. We'll give you a 2% for the first 2 years. But after those 2 years, it will adjust to whatever the rate is currently in the market. Well, if their rates went from 2% to 5 or 6 or 7%, their payments could literally double overnight. They couldn't make their payments. They defaulted on their loans. Now, why would you sign up for this? Well, a lot of the loan officers, which conveniently enough, apparently our guy here, Nick, used to be one. A lot of the loan officers would say, well, you could just refinance into a better loan later. Well, except when values stopped going up and the market started crashing, you didn't have an opportunity to refinance. So instead, you sold at a loss, you were underwater in your house, and you had to file bankruptcy. And there was tons of adjustable rate mortgages in 07, 08, and 09. Those don't exist now. I've never heard someone say, what makes a loan bad is because you're putting 17% down. Most people who get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage are putting down between 5 and 8%. 5 and 8% down. That's what I put down on my first owner-occupied loan, what I've had friends of mine put down on their first owner-occupied loans. Again, these are 30-year fixed rate loans. The payment is not going to change. Never heard someone define a loan as being bad because of a low down payment. I've only heard it defined as being bad because of adjustable rates and liar loans and ninja loans. First time I've ever heard this. But let's take a quick look at what the actual loans out there really look like. Let's look at the data, because that's what he likes. Okay, so first things first, let's look. What percentage of Americans have a 30-year mortgage? 90% of homeowners, 90% of homeowners have 30-year fixed rate debt. That was not how it was in 2007, 2008, and leading up to that recession. Let's look at this graph. This graph right here is adjustable rate mortgages. So you can see prior to the crash, right here, 2008, after that, the amount of adjustable rate mortgages, above 30% of mortgage applications and refinancing were requesting adjustable rates. After 07, 08, when the lending tightened significantly, those numbers have dropped all the way down to below 10% and have never come back above that since. Right now, however, 2022, we are starting to see a spike upwards. Why? Well, as interest rates have skyrocketed to 6 and 7%, people are more likely to entertain the idea of adjustable rate mortgages because they're trying to avoid paying the higher rate up front. I don't think this is a great strategy. I don't think getting adjustable rate mortgages is smart. That being said, the percentage of people who have them now are significantly smaller. Look at the graph. Way less people have them now than had them back then leading up to the crash. And there was years of people with these adjustable loans leading up to the crash. Right now, very small amount. Another thing to keep in mind, I have never seen a 2-year adjustable rate mortgage teased on any type of house like they were doing back then. The shortest turnaround I've seen is 3 years. Most are 5, 7, and even 10-year adjustable rate mortgages. Now you look at how many adjustable rate mortgages were going into effect starting in 2002, all the way up to 2004, 5, 6. It took a few years before the effects of those actually were felt as the adjustable rates went into effect and people's payments doubled. If you're looking at a 3, 5, or 7-year time frame before rates could actually change, there is years before we would feel the impact of bad mortgages starting to evolve in today's market. You know, if you buy something in 2022 at adjustable rate mortgage, but it's fixed for the first 5 years, again, this is how Canada does their entire housing market. There is no 30-year fixed rate market up there. It's all 5-year fixed and adjustable after that. So there are ways, I suppose, to do it safer or more structured. Again, I'm not advising you to get an ARM mortgage. I'm advising you to get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. But this is not what occurred in 05, 06, 07. The data, once again, is not on your side. Have adjustable rate mortgages ticked up? Yes. Are they anywhere near the level that they were before? Absolutely not. And I would have to see that occur over a much longer time frame and get to a much higher number before I would say, yeah, I'm concerned there's too many adjustable rate mortgages currently in the market. Next, let's look at the first thing he talked about, bank foreclosures. Banks are holding back a wave of foreclosures that are coming your way. It's going to tank the market. It's going to sink the market. They're going to unleash all these foreclosures. Really? All right, well, why don't we look at the data? In fact, the graph that he pulls up, and maybe he pulls it up later in the video, but I'm going to go to the graph that he pulls up. All right, let's take a quick look at the foreclosure data. Okay, so right here you can see in 2007, when foreclosures started to occur, we were spiking way up to 1.2 million a year, 2.3 million, 2.8, 2.8, 1.8, millions and millions and millions of foreclosures. Huge spike in foreclosures coming out of the Great Recession. That much of a spike in inventory, that much of an increase in inventory as banks were taking houses back and putting them on the market was enough to drop prices because things were flooding the market. There was a huge supply. Boom. But when we go look right now, starting in 2014, 2015, the normal amount of foreclosures that occur even in healthy markets, because obviously there's going to be some level of foreclosures that occur, people who don't make their payments in any market, up, down, or sideways. It looks like the healthy amount, 1 million, 900,000, 600,000, 600,000. And then to his point, in 2019, when the health event started at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, banks were told by the government that they had to issue forbearance. You can't foreclose on these people. You have to allow them to stack their payments on the end of the mortgage with no punishments for them. So that's what banks started doing. And people who just didn't pay at all, knowing there was foreclosure moratoriums and eviction moratoriums, said, I ain't going to pay. I'll just sit here and live here for free until I get forced out. So he's correct that there was a surplus of foreclosures building up. However, if you look at the rate at which those foreclosures were building up, because we don't have the complete data for 2022 yet, let me go ahead and take another look. This is the actual graph that he brought up, which just shows the first half of each year, because we only have the first half of data for 2022. In the year 2021, that was our smallest amount of foreclosures ever. Why? Because the government had taken action and said you're not allowed to foreclose. You have to offer forbearance. So foreclosures dropped substantially. So when you see headlines that say foreclosures are doubling, yes, they're doubling from this artificially low number right here. But they're still, even if they double, even if they triple, even if they 5x, even if they 10x, if you took 10 times the amount of mortgages, or 10 times the amount of foreclosures in 2021, that'd be 650,000 foreclosures. That still wouldn't even be half of what these regular years are. That still wouldn't even be the equivalent of what these regular year foreclosures are over here. So when you say waves of inventory is going to hit the market, I don't believe it. Was there some pent-up demand that started to get foreclosed on in 2022? Yes. And what happened? We went from what happened in 2021, we reverted back to 2020, and we're still beneath 2019 levels, which is the last year that I would consider normal because it was before the health event. We have a long, long way to go in foreclosures just to get back to normal. And we have an almost insurmountable distance to go to get all the way back to what I would consider the unhealthy levels of 2007, 8, 9, 10. I mean, those are just catastrophic numbers. We're nowhere near this. So I agree with Nick. I agree that it's possible for a major crash in prices to occur if we saw a huge surplus in inventory to the housing market. What caused that last time? Last time in 07, 08, 09, we saw peak level unemployment hit 10% in 2009. That was the height of unemployment. When that many people lost their job, couldn't make their payments, and were either forced to sell or foreclosed on, and then the house was sold, there was such a surplus in inventory that it was able to bring prices down and bring them down substantially. Right now, as it stands at the end of 2022, we're in the 3%, it's like 3.5% for unemployment. We are at record low unemployment. The jobs report shows that that the country is gaining jobs every single month and has been for a long time. So my question is, what is the event that is going to push us into getting to 10% unemployment again? I don't see it yet. I mean, barring some black swan event like another health event or World War III with Russia, obviously these types of things, you can't really just plan for them, right? I mean, could it happen? Could we go to war in World War III? Yeah, sure. Is that going to trash the markets? I'm sure it will. Okay, barring some major black swan event like that, how do we get to 10% unemployment like we had back in 2009 at the peak? How do we get to that number? We would have to triple from where we're at right now. Triple the unemployment from where we're at right now. How does that happen? That doesn't just happen overnight. It was a systemic thing built into the economy back then because of years of bad loans. Banks were going bankrupt. Credit dried up. Businesses couldn't lend. Businesses couldn't borrow. Everybody was afraid to buy something. That drove the economy down. That's not happening this time. So what is going to push us to 10%? So again, I'll give him the grace of if we can, if we could get to 7 or 8% unemployment, I think that would be enough of a shift to actually flood the market with enough properties that we could maybe see prices start to drop. Do I think they're going to drop by 30, 40, 50%? Maybe if it got really ugly in a few select markets, it possibly could. But remember, the worst national yearly drop in real estate prices that we've ever seen as a country is under 10%. It's like 9.8% was the greatest single year decline in prices. So when he says things like 20, 30, 40, 50% drop in prices by 2023 or the end of 2023 or the end of this year, bro, it's never happened before. What are you talking about? And I'm curious, genuinely curious, what creates 10% unemployment? What will cause that right now that you can actually conceive of occurring? And the very last thing I would say, let's say it happens. Let's say that it actually does happen. We get to that crazy level of unemployment somehow. Do you think that the government is going to want to be the party in power when people's values get destroyed like they did last time? Do you think whoever is in power is going to stand by and let that happen? What did they just show us they'll do if things get a little hairy? They will force banks to offer forbearance, to make it illegal to foreclose on you and illegal to evict you. Regardless of what party is in power, do you think they're going to want to be the ones who say, we let the American people get foreclosed on and trash housing values again? No, I think, looking at all of the history of evidence of government interference, I think that it's very likely that even if unemployment did skyrocket, we still wouldn't see a surplus of houses go to the market, because I think the government's going to step in, and I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. It isn't. This is not capitalism. This is definitely government interference. But I think the government steps in and says, nope, you can't foreclose and you can't evict. Private banks, private lenders, and private landlords, you guys are going to eat it just like you did in 2020. You're going to do it for us again because we want to get reelected, and we're going to say we stuck up for the little guy. Screw you guys. That's what's going to happen if you ask me.
Well, I've done a pretty thorough job of dissecting a bunch of the different information and data points that he likes to talk about. I think I've proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he is incorrect on numerous different counts. In the next and final video in this series, we are going to talk about the long-lasting damage that I think he's doing. We're going to look at what the people who watch his channel are saying and how it is a detriment to them and their ability to either start investing in real estate or buy their first home. So join me in the next video and we'll see you there.